before buying a carry champion, we're mainly suggesting you focus on both carries and frontline, with more emphasis on the frontline. With that, we can move into our top 3. The tip coming in at number 3 is to learn what champions are the best item holders. This doesn't mean item carries, but specifically item holders, meaning champions you use throughout the game as stand-ins for your eventual carry. This can be in the early, mid, or even the late game. It just depends on what items you have and what you're playing for. Fully understanding the intricacies of the meta is a bit out of the scope of what we're talking about here. We're speaking more in broad strokes for the current meta. Knowing which champions have a higher impact with items will help improve each stage of the game. For example, Kayle has become a viable late game champion. There are quite a few champions that can hold items for her, but knowing which are the best will make the pivot into Kayle a lot smoother later on. Learning this does require a few things. First off, playing the game. If you want to improve, you need to play, and playing will show you what's working and not. Second, streams. High-ranked streamers are an invaluable source of information on the current meta, as they often play the game more than others and have a lot of knowledge. Lastly, looking up match histories can give a small idea of what comps are doing well, which gives insight into which synergies and champions you may want to consider. Overall, there's a lot of ways to go about gaining this information, but seeking it out is the first step. Next up, we have the number 2 tip, which is the early game has a large impact on the end of the game. What this tip boils down to is focusing more on the earlier stages of the game and improving there, more so than worrying about the best late game comp to run. Looking up a build and seeing what's doing well in the meta can be useful, but it's not going to help you in the early rounds where you want to be saving as much health as possible and building a good economy. Specifically, we're focusing on stages 2 and 3, where doing well in those 2 stages can directly correlate to where you finish at the end of the game. Things like our previous tip with learning item holders or focusing on your front line. Focusing on improving all of those early game aspects is going to vastly improve your overall game. If you've ever wondered how players at the top of the ladder can be so consistent, it's because they can consistently play the early stages of the game very well. And now for the number 1 tip, watch tournaments. The tournament scene in TFT is fantastic, with a lot of highly competitive players from multiple regions giving it their all to do well in tournaments. As we're nearing the end of Set 5, that means the larger tournaments are being played, like the recently concluded North American Regionals. Watching these tournaments is a great way to gain overall knowledge on the game, even though the metas of these tournaments are often isolated. By that we mean you're not going to see a lot of those playstyles on the regular ladder, as the competitive level is much higher and the tournaments often form their own meta. So even if the meta itself may not apply to your general ladder games, the way those games are being played will. Things like positioning, pivots, how they play the early game, and what items are doing well. The list goes on and on. As such, we definitely recommend watching a tournament when you have the ability to do so, or at least the VOD, as chances are you'll gain quite a lot of insight into improving at TFT. That's going to be it for today's video, folks. There's always ways to improve at a game like TFT, and even seemingly minor tips can have a big impact, so we hope these tips will be useful in helping you climb higher on the ladder. Let us know in the comment section below if you have any extra tips to provide. Thank you for watching, and if you're enjoying our content, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for future Giant Slayer TFT videos.
But more than seaworthy.
Flesh is but a garment. Humbled by
Feel the earth shake.
nature fleeing.
Sucked out with the tide.
It's a compound fracture, technically.
Another petal falls.